Good evening. This is a meeting of Athens City Council. It's Monday, April 9th. This is a series of committee meetings. Tonight we'll be meeting in Finance and Personnel Committee. The Planning and Development Committee will be meeting in Transportation. We'll have discussion in all those areas. Before we begin, I have just a couple miscellaneous announcements, and I think the mayor has at least one. Just a couple communications that I've received recently. One is from our personnel director, Claudia Reagan. She's saying that several members of council have been talking to her about offering domestic partner benefits to our employees, and she is suggesting that maybe a group of us or all of us might want to meet with her sometime. She is going to, in the next week or so, shortly give us a few dates to work on. So we'll be thinking about that. Please, I'll try to get the possible dates emailed to you. And another dated issue, when we met 10 days ago or so and had lunch with President McDavis, he suggested, or maybe I think it was somebody from City Council suggested, that we might have a council meeting on campus and make it more open to student senate and other students. So we just received this email from his office asking us to put forward a couple dates that he might work with. We did decide that such a meeting would be a committee meeting because we could maybe tailor the agenda a little more suitably to the students rather than run down a full agenda on a regular meeting night. So we would be trying to set this up for a committee meeting. This is the 9th, it'd be 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks from then. So please, Debbie Walker is out until Thursday. Try to get some suggestions or times. Maybe tell me the dates that would not work for you. That should be the easiest to do. Just get those to me somehow, and we'll. Are you talking about a day other than a Monday? No, we're talking about a Monday, 7 o'clock. We'll do the same thing, the same time, just different location. Okay. And so, no, on a Monday, times you've already got reserved for Athens City Council, I believe. Okay. Well, so it's some people aren't as dedicated as us, I believe. Okay. So those are just informational things. And more information, Mayor?
Okay, yeah. We were just looking at some of the dates for committees.
And if you wanted to capture the Ohio University students while still in session, the next committee is April 23rd.
We don't have a whole lot.
And so then we're looking at May 14th. And
so we've got maybe 2 at the most.
Yeah.
Okay, the only 2 announcements I'd like to put forward is that there will be the Athens area town hall meeting. Won't You Be My Neighbor? This covers housing and recovery for people in need. This will be this Thursday coming up, April 12th, 6:30 to 8:30 at the community center. And again, it's discussing the issues of housing, those who have problems finding housing, and hopefully come up with some solutions, or at least look at it, view the problems thereof. The other one I want to make an announcement to is we received from AP last week that they have a planned power outage on the Richland Avenue area. This will be tomorrow, the 10th. I think I actually talked about this at my last press conference. I don't see the time. The time would be outage will happen approximately between 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And that they're basically just moving some stuff around, I guess, power lines or something, and they have to turn off the power. It will affect Richland Avenue area they're talking about would be Lamar, possibly Coventry, Canterbury, Hickory, Pomeroy Road, Cardiff, Sussex Drive, and York. So it's a good section of the south side there. Usually they overestimate the amount of time. I will not swear to it that they'll be able to have it shorter than that period, but usually when they say they'll be out for 5-6 hours, they're usually quicker than that, but they give themselves some room to work things out. And that's all I really have, unless you have anything else, no?
That will information be on the website?
I hope
Can we
so,
do
yes.
that?
We can get that on the website.
Okay.
Of course, anybody with a power outage wouldn't be able to see it.
Well, yeah, but they'll know not to call. You know.
Okay, yes.
Okay. And Steve Patterson has something to say.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just have a brief announcement. This is kind of a preamble to something that's going to be coming, you're going to be hearing more and more about. That just came out of the most recent JPAC, which is the Joint Police Safety Advisory Council, which is made up of OU employees, faculty, staff, students, as well as individuals that the mayor has appointed. But what we're going to be doing over the course of the next month is there is a police cruiser that has been donated by OU PD, I believe, Ohio University Police Department, that has been stripped down of its markings. There's going to be a citywide contest to where teams are going to be comprised of both Athens residents as well as individuals affiliated with OU, so it's joint in terms of who is putting together their idea of what the cruiser should look like. We're hoping that it'll be a big hit because it is a joint cruiser that's going to be, again, both OU and APD. There'll be more information to follow over the course of the next couple weeks because there's a subcommittee that's working on putting together the rules and regulations for this event. As it stands at this point, the only big caveat is it has to say police on 3 sides of the vehicle, but the rest of the bodywork is fair game for whatever markings we want to put on. It's going to be tasteful, but it should be interesting. And again, we'll unroll or unveil more of this as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for letting us take up some time here. We're going to move now into Finance and Personnel Committee, chaired by Christine Knisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 4 items tonight, and maybe perhaps some more miscellaneous items, but the first is a special presentation by the Central Collection Agency, and Auditor Kathy Heck talked to us about this last month, and as I understand, it's a way for helping locate non-filing taxpayers, and is something that the city might want to be considering to help us with this.
We hope so. I brought our city income tax administrator with me tonight. Tina has worked in the tax department for over 5 years. She became our income tax administrator in January. Like the deputy auditor position, this is a statutory position. If we collect municipal income taxes, we have to have a tax administrator. And so Tina has put together a packet that she put in front of everyone with the information in it, and she's going to go over most of the high points again. As Member Knisley said, it's probably been a month since I brought this up. We're pretty excited about this program, but we do need an ordinance from council allowing us to enter into a contract for this. So we'll make our presentation, and hopefully, if you have any questions, feel free to ask tonight. So, Tina?
I'll just give you a little background about CCA. They're a centralized collection agency. They started in Cleveland around 1966. They have members of 50 different communities that they do their typical income tax collection on. However, a few years ago, there was a House bill that was passed. It was 3452. This allowed the central collection agencies to obtain IRS income tax database as long as they had more than 250,000 residents. What they were able to do with that is they were able to branch out a little bit more, and if they came into an agreement with smaller cities like Athens that has less than 250,000 residents, they could sign an agreement, and that gives CCA the opportunity to compare Athens' database against the IRS database. The IRS database is still completely off limits to us. We have no access to it. We won't see any information for it. Therefore, we're also not responsible to keep their high level of security. CCA is responsible for all aspects of the IRS database. Once the individual is located and they file with CCA, the money is then sent to Athens on a monthly basis minus their fee, which is a max of 5%. And that money is Of course, it's only if they collect do we have to pay anything. But they, once the information is filed with them, it then becomes our records. The taxpayer becomes our taxpayer. The information is sent to Athens. We create an account form, and for future filings, all the information is done through Athens. So it's like a one-time thing. They find your taxpayer for you, they file and collect the money the first time, and then it becomes an Athens taxpayer. It's no longer protected by the IRS rights. Once they file, all rights are open, and Athens has all the information. Just to kind of give you a couple points here, some examples of why this would be a good opportunity for us. They will help us locate businesses who are filing withholdings federally, but are not filing with Athens. So they're going to compare all Athens businesses against the federal IRS database, and if they're paying them and not paying us, it'll flag it. They'll send them a letter, they'll capture that information, and then collect all the back taxes as well. Another area where they will be looking for is residents who have rental income or have business income that are filing federally and are not filing with us. This will also help locate rentals of people, residents of Athens who have rentals outside of Athens that we don't know about. So that would be a good way for us to capture them. Another area they would look at would be Athens residents that work outside the city of Athens that are responsible for paying the 0.65% credit to us that are not filing with Athens. So they would look for these areas. We have parameters we would give them, what we want to look for. We kind of custom design the entire program for us. We have a threshold so that we're not pulling in too many people. I think our threshold would be like $10,000 in wages. We wouldn't look for any. But once we put those parameters in place, what they do is they would, first we would sign the ordinance, or we'd pass the ordinance, and then Kathy would sign the agreement with CCA. They would take all of our Athens database, which is downloadable to them, because they do work with our software program. Then we would provide them with all the Athens addresses. Once we provide them with all that information, we're going to customize the program how we want it. Then they would send out letters to all of the potential taxpayers that there might possibly be. They're going to ask for, rather if it's just a wage income person, they're going to ask if their employer's withholding, and if so, just send a copy of their W-2, and then they will take them off the list at that point, and they maintain that list so that the taxpayers never bother twice. If they get a letter from them in error one time, that would be the only time they'd get it. And CCA maintains all that information for us. Once the taxpayers are located, CCA then has them file directly with them. Once they file, they're responsible for collecting all the money, all the penalties and interest, and any pay plans that might need set up. They set those up according to our parameters. Once the information is received and paid, then we get like a monthly download of information where they'll send us all the information for that month of the taxpayers and all of the money. I think it comes on the Monday after the second Wednesday, and it's directly deposited into our bank account. Let's see here. Now, prior to starting the CCA program, we kind of wanted to get it out there that we were going to do this and let all the residents and all the businesses know. And how we wanted to do that is we wanted to offer an amnesty from June 1st to June the 30th that gives everyone a chance to come forward, file any delinquent taxes. We would waive all penalties. However, we would still charge interest on any balances due. We would run that for 30 days. Then, after that point, once the records were updated, we would send our database to CCA then, so that everything was current. That would also give us a good chance to explain to the taxpayers what was going to happen here in the next few months, so when they receive the letters from CCA later in the year, they would know, they would be expecting them. Okay, let's see. And again, I just want to emphasize this program is mainly being used to identify potential taxpayers that we're unaware of. Currently, we have a 99% collection rate on the taxpayers we do know of. However, this one is solely designed to capture a new revenue source. It also will help us with our state auditors. we're required to show that we have exhausted all options to collect from every potential taxpayer there is. This would be a way for us to say, especially with the non-mandatory filing, it's kind of hard. Every year, first thing they ask when they walk in our office is, what do you do to collect all your taxpayers? So we have to go through every single rundown of every program that we use to collect all the revenue out there. This would be a good way for us to say, this is how we're trying to find those people that work outside the city and aren't paying their 0.65%, or people that have small businesses out of their house that we don't know about. So this is a good way to show our compliance with them.
I have a couple things to add there that she's talked about, and as far as the amnesty, the state actually is going to run their amnesty in May 15th through June 30th or something like that.
They run their 6 weeks.
So they're starting their amnesty. This is nothing unusual, and it's something that we've talked about for years, or my office has anyway, and we never have done this since I've been in office. So it would be a good way to advertise, and there are people who move to town and don't realize that there's a local income tax. And as you well know, in this day and age, a lot of people operate businesses out of their homes. You can do quite a bit with a computer, and so that would be, it's time, and as Tina said, it falls right in line with us. Then we can capture some people before they, have to be sent to us through CCA. The other thing I want to say is in your packet, the last 2 pages, I believe, are the sample Dayton letter. So if you want an idea of what the CCA will be sending, what people will be reading, because we don't want to offend anyone who's paying or doesn't owe. I think it clearly gives them the option, a phone call or an acknowledgement that, no, I don't owe that, or I don't own that, or, I don't live in the city limits, even though it looks like it, or anything like that. And once they get that response, then that's over with. And so we're not out to harass people, but as Tina said, we were actually written up in our audit the first year I was here for not following through on our, what we call a tickler file. We send out letters for delinquent taxpayers, and then we have a follow-up letter, and a third one, and at this point, we now have the law director's office helping us with that, but we do absolutely have a responsibility to collect income tax from people in the city of Athens. And just as we all are paying it, because my office withholds it from your paychecks. So, we have a responsibility, and we need the money, and as Tina said, the auditors absolutely ask us every year what we're doing, and I think we're doing very well, and this is just another level and an option that has become available to us just recently. And so we'd like to try it. There's no cost to the city, and whatever the CCA withholds is for their time and effort, and it would be on people that we probably would never catch ourselves. We have a 2-person tax department. We do not have the manpower to run around town knocking on doors or walking up to people in job sites saying, do you know if your employer is paying city income tax? So we do have some other systems in place where the code office sends us, business registration and rental permits, but as Tina said, there are other areas where people could fall between the cracks that we aren't catching them. Another thing that I wanted to emphasize is the confidentiality on both ends. CCA does not give us any information until they are sure that this person owes us city income tax. Once it comes into our office, it is also totally confidential. I think I've talked to everyone in the city about that before, that while, one side of my office is, 99% public record, the tax corner is 100%, confidential for income tax. And so we would absolutely abide by that. Do you have any other questions about your, what's in there is pretty much the review that Tina went over to begin with, and then the PowerPoint that they supplied us with, so if you have any other questions about them, and then this sample letter. And we do have some sample ordinances and a sample contract, which I actually have already given to Law Director Lang to review, that they use, and so if council is willing to, help us try this, then we'll go forth with that and give, the Finance Committee and the clerk ordinance information and make sure the contract fits in line with what the law director thinks we should be doing, so.
Let's take time for a few questions.
Did you have any?
Councilmember Patterson.
Yeah, I'm just curious, either Kathy or Tina, the CCA has listed on there, it's between 2 and 3% that they collect, and a maximum up to 5%. Can you give us some sense as to where that scale is coming from? Is it?
Yeah, I actually broke it down, and
There's a way they calculate
Yeah,
that.
it's
That's
a
why we
formula.
can't just say it's going to be 3%. They have a formula.
they have a two-factor formula. They take the total percentage of revenue collected for Athens divided by the total percentage collected overall for all 50-some communities. And then they take another formula, the total transactions for Athens divided by the total transactions for everyone. And then that gives you your percentage. And then it's a nonprofit, so they actually take their actual costs and then multiply it by your percentage and get how much you are charged. Now, again, I've talked to some other cities, and it does range anywhere from 2 to 4. Actually, I found that out. I'm going to put the 2 to 3 in there. However, it's maxed at 5. They can't take any more than 5%, and you are looking at income that you probably potentially wouldn't see anyways.
So we're talking about a percentage for the city,
Yes.
we're not talking about a percentage of the individual collections
No.
Oh, right,
coming
right.
in, just to be clear, because it's not.
Well, an example would be if, just use some pretty basic, if you owe $100, if they collected $100 for Athens, they couldn't charge us more than $5. I mean, it's going to be based on what they collect.
Okay.
And they just use that whole factor formula for everyone.
Okay.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina, for your presentation. A couple questions, one related directly to the information that you're sharing with us, and that is, do you know or could you foresee any negative consequences or ramifications of us moving forward with this?
I haven't seen any, because like I said, if they don't collect anything for us, they can't charge us anything. Now, one thing we didn't cover is, the only negative I could foresee is, we are not allowed to deal with the taxpayer. Since this is protected IRS database information, if someone gets a letter in the city of Athens and they want to call and talk to us, we can't talk to them.
Okay.
We have to refer them to CCA because we can't see the IRS information until they file. Now, once they have filed and CCA sends me the information and I have an account set up for them, I can discuss anything prior to what they filed on. But the only negative I see is someone might call our office, want to deal directly with us, and they can't. But, there is a little positive to that. We don't have the manpower hours in trying to deal with the whole collection process.
Okay.
But that's the one negative I have seen.
Thank you, Tina. One other quick question. Well, thank you. While the cameras are here. I noticed in the form you handed us that the city of Dayton's income tax, is it correct in stating that it's 2.25%?
It is. They
And
do have a
could-
lot higher percentage.
Could you remind us what ours is?
1.65 currently. For 2011, it was 1.75.
And-
Dayton is like us in the fact that they have non-mandatory filing, and they are kind of a college town, just way bigger than us. So that's why I tried to use some of the Dayton information.
Sure.
Just because we're more like them, and our parameters would be a lot like them as well.
One thing I would say that I also have copies of 2 references, one from Dayton and one from Troy. So if anybody's interested in getting other references from any cities, but we've been coming in contact with these people quite a bit recently. As you know, Tina and I have been going to centralized tax meetings in Columbus, and actually the last one we went to was Dayton. And they just can't seem to say enough about it. I have heard nothing negative about anyone's interaction with CCA.
Mayor Weil.
You just brought up a point. I mean, politically, we want to get away from this concept of centralized tax collection, and yet we're hiring some organization called Central Collection Agency. Does this actually kind of like weaken our argument for doing it locally?
I don't think so. We are really only going after a small percentage of non-filers. All the other, thousands of taxpayers in Athens deal directly with our office.
And what we have to consider too is this is only one time. They're only going after them one time. As soon as they locate them and find them and report them to us, they are our taxpayer. all future filings come directly through us. They don't go through CCA anymore.
Okay.
So it's more like a delinquency hunter
Yeah.
than it is a collection.
Do you have any idea how much is out there that we're not gathering? I mean,
It's really hard to say with our demographic,
It's an
you know.
unknown, right?
Yeah, it's so hard to compare it to. But any dollar we get is a dollar we didn't have, and then all the future dollars on top of that.
okay.
Okay, Councilmember Reisner.
A couple questions. Do you have any idea of where you think most of the delinquent taxes would be coming from? Would it be like an individual, or would it be like a business operating out of a basement somewhere?
I think it's going to be two locations we're going to find the most out of. One is going to be the withholding. Businesses that are paying employees and withholding federally, but not reporting withholding to us. So I do think we're going to find some there. I think the other one we're going to find is the 0.65% credit, because we didn't change that rule until 2006. So there's a lot of people still that we're catching up with later that don't know about, that we've had to go back and file all these back years. So I think, anyone that works outside the city and doesn't work in Athens, I think that's where we're going to find them, is the 0.65%, where we're only given the 1% credit now.
We used to give full reciprocity. If someone was paying, say, Nelsonville's rate is 1.75, or it was the last time I looked, and ours has been 1.6 for last year, ever since I've been in office. So if they were paying more in the city where they either lived or worked, then they did not pay us at all. And then in 2005, we changed that, and so they still have to pay us the 1% or 0.65, anything over 1%. So they would still, now they pay us a percentage of that. And that's who she's talking about, people who didn't realize that it's not the full reciprocity anymore, and that we do collect part of what our tax rate is.
Well, one thing that just came to mind is that I'm assuming that because you're getting, what businesses exist in the city of Athens that are licensed. So you'd have a pretty good idea that they're already paying the income tax when doing the payroll deduction, correct?
Oh, we don't, not everybody is licensed. As I said, that was years ago, the contractor registration that we just put into effect in the last couple of years. The former code director and I have been talking about that for years and did research. And he felt very strongly, and we didn't include it in our code this time, that home occupations are the biggest thing there. And that's why I bring up that about people doing consulting and things like that out of their home on the computer. I don't know how we could ever catch those people unless somebody told us.
Well, the point I'm getting to is that if you use CCA to track them down and you find them, and they're paying federal income tax on the income that they're generating out of their basement, if they're supposed to be licensed and they're not, that puts them in violation of some law, correct?
Well, our local law, but I'll tell you right now, it's a one-way street in our office. While the code office sends us rental permits and contractor registrations, we are not allowed to provide anyone's information to anyone else.
Okay.
That's just income tax law, and we can't go the other way. Several years ago, our fire chief was unhappy with the former tax administrator because they had found someone and gave us the information, and we made contact. They still needed their contact information but had lost it, and we couldn't give it back to them. So it's a one-way street in our tax department. So that's what happens there.
This would also help under-reporting as well. It would also take and compare what they're reporting to us against what they're reporting federally, just to match up and make sure that they're reporting all their local wages to us as well.
Okay. No other questions? Tina, I want to thank you for your time.
I have one last question.
Okay, go ahead. Councilmember Goss.
And last time you brought this up, I asked the question of what's the typical rate in terms of letters that they send out and people they find that owe cities money? Like, do they send 100 letters out and get one person that owes money, or is it more targeted and accurate?
It's really hard to say, again, because you're looking at the demographic of Athens. We have such a high student versus resident ratio, so it's kind of really hard to pin down how much. And of course, they can't share that information. I mean, it's IRS protected. They can't tell us that they sent out 100 letters, but only 10 people filed. All they can tell us is 10 people filed, here's your 10 people's information. They're just not allowed to tell me how many they sent out. And they can't share other cities as well because of the fact that, and it's such, I mean, the regulations they have to go through to get this IRS database is unreal. I mean, there's guards on every floor, locked facilities. It's pretty strenuous. So just the fact that we even have access to it is pretty impressive.
And I fully believe everyone needs to pay their fair share to what they owe the city.
Thank you.
So do I. I think we all do. But it concerns me a little bit that they could send a letter to everyone in Athens and say, you know, you might owe the city money. And I wouldn't want to get a letter that says, you know, your credit rating could be affected and legal action could be taken if I didn't.
And did you see the letter in the back, the Dayton letter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd encourage everyone to read it, and, you know, we're open to feedback on that. That's a pretty standard letter for them, though. But I think the fact is, if you know you don't owe, then you just tell them.
And the other thing is, as I understand, what they're doing is they're utilizing database information that says there's a flag here, so not everybody's going to get the
Right,
notice. It's
exactly.
where there's discrepancy that
So it would be
that letter
targeted
might
in-
follow.
We
It's
do,
very
we send them
focused.
they will have our list of names already, so those people won't be getting letters.
Okay, good.
It's possible people will get letters that don't owe, but it won't be because they're already paying us. And it won't be because they're a student making under $10,000 for a year. You know, we can set those levels. We could say no one under 15 or 20,000, because we don't want people making small amounts of money to get those letters. But they will eliminate anyone who is already paying us. And yes, there is that possibility that someone doesn't owe that will get that. But I'd say that would be a small percentage.
And just in terms of the bigger perspective for the city income and the finances and how we operate, of the general fund, and please correct me, I think approximately 70% of our general fund is derived from income tax. And of that general fund, then, over 70% goes to pay salary and fringe for our police and fire
Police and
and our street
fire.
workers. So this kind of money is
It's
essential
very
to our
important.
operations.
The income tax money is what you might call discretionary money. Money that is taken into most other funds cannot be used elsewhere. The money you pay for your water, sewer, and garbage cannot be used to help fund a fireman or policeman or fix a street or anything like that. However, general fund money, tax money, can be used anywhere. So much of our money is absolutely earmarked, and we need that tax money to support special things that come up that aren't covered by any other funds or money, and in particular, as Member Nisley said, the general fund that doesn't have departments that make their own money, like recreation or utilities. You know, we're basically funded by our income tax money.
I just want to follow up real quick on your question. I do have plans to design our letter to make it really user-friendly on the fact that if you work in Athens and your taxes withheld by your employer and you get this letter, it's going to be easy. Just check that box, send a copy of your W-2. They go on the do not bother list no more, and they maintain that. So, you know, and next year when we follow up, they're only looking for new accounts that had never generated a letter again. So that way, you know, it's a pretty brief inconvenience. You just have to provide that information and say, yes, my taxes are withheld, and they won't bother you no more in the future. Because, you know, I would understand being a little upset if I got the letter too, and I definitely wouldn't want to ever get a second letter.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tina. And thanks for all your work. Ongoing. I know it's a lot
Like I said,
of work.
I'm like Kathy, I haven't heard anything negative about
Okay.
it. And the people in Dayton and Troy and them just rave over it, so.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
do we anticipate that we'll see an ordinance in next week?
If I have the sense of the council that that's an agreeable thing to do, I think we should proceed with an ordinance right away and work towards that June amnesty time so we can advertise that sufficiently to give people notice that there is the amnesty.
Yeah,
great.
I think it'll take us a little while to get the amnesty out, but our office is ready to start at least working on what avenues we want to pursue in advertising.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Yes, that would be great if we could get that going.
Second agenda item that we have listed under finance tonight, we're actually going to defer. This is sidewalk assessments, and Councilmember Gosney is well versed in this, so we'll defer to the Transportation Committee meeting to discuss the sidewalk assessments for the two projects that we have coming up. Third agenda item that I have is a request from the Auditor's Office to, a request to move $7,500 to cover the Career Connections temporary person in the tax department. And what this is that we have a vacancy right now, and as I understand, we've not made a final decision on filling that. And so we do have a very real need to have that office staffed.
We do. We put someone in there, it's tax time. And so, as I said, our tax department is really a two-person department. And so we did hire someone through Career Connections to be in there temporarily and get us through tax season. Of course, you know, we have other people get involved, especially this time of year, in helping with taxes, but we did need that. So what this is just moving money because the Career Connections person is paid out of professional services rather than our regular salary. The money is there because that position has been open since January. And so we just need to move the money into this line so we can pay.
So that's the TC 100s to TC 300s?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
okay.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item that we'd like to talk about is another staffing item, and Councilmember Patterson will cover that for us tonight.
Yes, thank you. More nicely. One of the things that's come up through the City Services Safety Director is that there's going to be a retirement within the fire department as well as a retirement in the police department, and then some potential retirements, more retirements down the road in the not-too-distant future, and therefore to start planning for replacements both within the fire department and within the police department. The issue here that's critical, two issues. One is that we're getting close to that critical mass for having the manpower necessary both within the Athens Police Department as well as the fire department. The second thing being is that it takes a while being 1 year's time in terms of training, and in particular for the fire department, 1 year before a firefighter can be operating on his own in an emergency situation. So therefore, it's important that we start moving forward with looking for hires into both, like I said, the fire department and the police department.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Councilmember Butler?
And this discussion is relevant because in prior administration or prior council, we had acknowledged a soft hiring freeze. I don't know if that was mentioned or if you alluded to that.
I did not.
Or
No,
if Chris
that's a good
did, yeah.
point.
So, and that was prior to your time and prior to a few other people's time, so that's why we're having this discussion.
Okay.
Oh, right, and the other part of the discussion was, and thank you for, I was just thinking about that too, it's not council action except to give approval to replace these positions that we already have. Those positions are already funded for the year in the budget, so replacing them will not be an added burden financially on the city.
Thank you.
That's good to know. Okay, thank you.
I have a few miscellaneous, and actually this is kind of back again to Steve, if I may.
Oh, certainly.
That fire grant that we received, we're still waiting to build up money in that capital improvement in order to proceed to.
This is a Mark Radios?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. This is the Mark Radio grant? Is that
Correct,
what
I'm
you-
sorry.
Okay, I didn't hear the mayor.
So,
So hopefully soon we'll be able to proceed with an appropriation of that money from capital improvement. I think it was like a 90-10, if you recall.
yeah.
But it's reimbursable, so that's why we're waiting on the funding.
Another miscellaneous item is we are now outsourcing the Athens transit bus system to HAPCAP. So therefore, the money that is gathered from the state and the feds to run our bus system is going to be going through HAPCAP rather than us. Am I correct in that?
Right.
So we have to deappropriate a certain amount of money out of our 214 line. I do not have that number yet.
Okay.
I'm going to be working on it with Michael Lockman, HAPCAP, as well as Ray along the way. But we can anticipate having to bring it down at least maybe 300,000, if not more.
Okay.
It's in the professional service line. We've had appropriated about $475,000 in that line. But that's it. Since we're not collecting it anymore and they're operating the bus system, they will be gathering the money.
That was
So-
based on what we got last year.
Yeah.
So,
And remember, we had an extension of our contract till March 31st. So at this point, we're out of the bus supervision or administration right now, and they are on it. So there'll have to be a change in that dollar amount. When, as I say, we're still working out the numbers on that. Some of that still has to be some money in there for our local match. The estimate of that would be about 80 or 90,000, but the rest of it has to be whittled down to reflect our income.
So we're saying that's no longer a resource of the city that we would have taken in that money, but HAPCAP is now managing it for us.
Yes.
So that's why we're having to change the appropriation amount.
Yes, to
Okay.
reflect the reality.
Okay,
Okay? I'll get you those numbers as soon as possible.
okay.
What?
And then,
Okay. And that's all.
I know we have another agenda item, and I don't want to forget my last agenda item, too. I do want to discuss transient guest tax. Okay, but Kathy, I think you
this
had
is a
something
quick
as
one.
auditor.
I just wanted to let council know that our East State Street bond is coming due June 29th, and so we will be appropriating that money. It might already be appropriated, but I'll let you know what the amount is going to be. It is currently $750,000 that we owe, and we paid $250,000 down last year, so it will probably be around that amount again this year.
Okay.
So, whatever, 20 million or whatever it was, down to $500,000 finally. Nice.
Okay.
And you talk about the tourism, transient guest tax?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to attempt an explanation of this. We've talked about this briefly before, and I'll give a little bit of background information. And what we're coming forward with tonight is a recommendation that we have worked with the Finance Committee, the auditor, and the mayor and the Service Safety Director about what we think is a more even distribution of that guest tax money. So currently, as way of background information, we have 6% tax charged on rooms in hotels and motels in the city. And then we have Ohio Revised Code that defines for us the administration and allocation of that tax. So the revised code says that we are required to deposit 50% of that into another account for tourism activities, and then 50% we are allowed to account or deposit into the city general fund. And you might remember that last quarter what we had was we did have a buildup of money in that tourism account. We had a carry forward of $11,804 in that fund. We had receipts in January of $67,000. When we split that out, $33,577 to tourism and the general fund. What we needed to do was to make a transfer from the general fund into the tourism fund. Ray Hazlett, the deputy auditor, has on several occasions made a recommendation that he thinks rather than splitting the money 50-50 between the general fund and the tourism fund, that what might be more appropriate is during part of the year, change that percentage to the 70%, because we pay 35 to Economic Development Council with a cap at $55,000 to the Economic Development Council, and then 35% to the Athens Convention and Visitors Bureau. So what I asked the auditor's office to do was to generate a worksheet so we could go over the details of how this might work. And to see if there would be an advantage to, rather than splitting it out 50-50, to change it to 70-30 until the terms of the contract were met. And what happens is that if we assumed $80,000, do you have extra copies of that? Oh boy, we'll walk them through the worksheet. Okay. All right, so the top half of this worksheet says that is as is with no changes or transfers. And so you might see that what happened, if you look transfer from general fund, that's about the fifth line down. The first column, that's the $1,700 that we had to transfer at the end of the first quarter over from the general fund to tourism in order to meet our obligations. So what we had, actually, if you look at the line above that, it says fund balance, and that's going to be the critical one we're going to follow all the way across that line in the top half of this spreadsheet. So in quarter one, we had a $1,600 deficit, and we needed to make the transfer over. If you go to the second quarter, you'll see that there would be a $15,900 negative balance again, so we would need to make another transfer. If you'll follow over now to the third quarter, you would see that we would have a $7,400 deficit, and we would need to transfer money over once again to the tourism fund. By the fourth quarter, we would have reached the $55,000 cap for the Economic Development Council, so you wouldn't have a transfer needed. So let's go down to the bottom half of this spreadsheet that we're looking at, and that is what they're suggesting, which is a 70% to the tourism until the Economic Development Council $55,000 cap is met. So what would happen, we have already what's happened in quarter one. If you go once again down to the transfer from the general fund, that historically last quarter we transferred that $1,700 that was due over to tourism. But if you go to the next quarter, if we split 70-30, we would not need to make a transfer from the general fund to the tourism fund. If you go to the third quarter, we would not need to make a transfer from the general fund to the tourism fund, and nor in the fourth quarter. So what would happen then is that by year end, the general fund and tourism fund would not have, let's see, there's a $3,000 balance indicated up in the top half of our spreadsheet. If you look at that, the tourism fund balance at the end of the year would carry $3,000. So it's, in my mind, what's happening too, it's almost, I look at it like I would my personal finances. Like the general fund is that money that's in there that's operating for us, and we have contracts and obligations that say we pay 70% of it out. What's happening right now is we're building money up in the general fund as if we think we have it to spend, when it really needs to be appropriated at a 70% level to economic development and to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So I think what the Deputy Auditor's recommendation is that by changing the split and changing it only until we've met these obligations during the year, it gives us a more even, a more accurate picture of what we have available in the general fund. Any questions? Councilmember Fall.
It's more of, so basically what we're doing is making bookkeeping and things that come before the council easier, because we don't have to shift this money around and do the ordinances to change the funding and make it portray reality a bit more with the calendar year.
Right. As long as council understands those payments, excuse me, our contractual obligations, in the end, the same amount of money will end up in the general fund.
Right.
But our payments are top-heavy because of the EDC. And then their limit comes, and sometimes they don't even get a payment fourth quarter. It just depends. And so the money has to be there. And as council, passed an appropriation just a couple months ago for about $1,700, so we could make our first payment of this year. To keep from doing that every quarter, this would allow the auditor's office to put that money in there. And then in the end, whatever's left will be in the general fund. And it evens out. If you look at the $146,000, is what ends up in the general fund either way we do it, because that's how much money. And of course, those are our estimates based on past
Now,
experience.
yeah,
but-
the mayor has commented, too, though, that we do, on occasion, have other tourism kinds of activities that the city wants to support. And so if we're running a balance in that account that only accounts for the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Economic Development Council, then what we would need to do is, when we do want to support those other activities, we would need to make an appropriation.
But those would be one-time only appropriations. or-
Right, and I think that has happened at Halloween historically, is that correct?
Halloween, let's see, something like Boogie and the Bricks where you actually spend money for overtime. Goba, a couple of years ago, events like that nature too. I mean, extra special things that show up,
But they're once a year or
yeah,
something.
once a decade maybe.
Yes, Councilmember Gosney.
Do we ever anticipate that the Economic Development Council, if we keep them at 55,000 for the near future, that they won't receive that much? It's 35% of the bed tax.
No, actually.
They'll always receive that, basically, right?
It was capped,
Well-
historically it was capped. At one time, they were getting 55, and the Tourism Bureau was getting 55.
Right.
But it started climbing, because we've actually added hotels and motels over time. I was sitting in the audience when this was capped. Jim probably remembers this as well. Basically said, okay, enough is enough. At that time, they were actually part of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
They were blended in with the Chamber of Commerce. And the feeling of that time of council was that it's a good incentive for the Tourism Bureau to have no upper limit, because that's an incentive to keep bringing in more tourism. On the other hand, they thought that they weren't sure if they were really worth the capping, was that there was no real reason to keep going up at that point. I forget who was, I think, I remember the presentation there, but it was like, okay, this is as much as you need and no more.
And so I guess my question is, we define it as 35% up to 55,000, but it'll essentially, unless the city changes the amount we pay the Economic Development Council, it'll essentially be 55,000 every year.
Yes.
Until that's changed.
We are, the way that the Economic Development Council, when they split from the Chamber of Commerce, was that there was an executive board that, it was essentially a pay-to-play level, which included the university, the county, and the city. I am right now president of the Economic Development Council, so.
So I guess sort of to, why I was asking that is, why don't we simply pay them 55,000 a year instead of defining it as 35% up to this, and then we have to do these accounting changes based on when the funds come in?
Well, the fact is, if we want that money to come in from our transient guest tax collections, we're not going to have that money. I guess we could wait till the end of the year to pay them. But I suspect that they would prefer, they operate on a pretty small budget. It's only like
So
a
it's a
two-person
timing of when the revenues
office.
come in
I would
I think
versus...
they would
They would
prefer
need
to
it.
have that coming in that way.
That makes sense.
And that's the way we've done it for the Convention and Visitors
Right,
Bureau,
right.
so. And that's the other thing about it, we've always paid them out of the tourism fund, so that's where we have the account lines. And so in the future, if council wants to change any of that, we could pay them out of the general fund. But this is sort of a way, as Member Nisley said, of safeguarding that money and make sure it is set aside for our, because the council just renewed those contracts going through, 2014?
14.
So we are obligated to make those payments through then. And so, yes, otherwise we'd probably have to make them wait till the third quarter to get a one-time payment.
That wouldn't work so well.
I doubt if they would like
Yeah.
that, but yeah, so we pay quarterly. And actually, that's in the contracts, I believe.
I think it is too.
Because the hotels and motels have 20 days after the quarter to send their money to us, and then we have 20 days to forward it. That's why, we're in a crunch here now. This probably can't go through 3 readings because our next payments are due by May 10th at the latest, so.
Now, one option would be, if we, assigning this ordinance, would be to set a 3-year limit on it and reevaluate it at the time that the Economic Development Council and Athens and Convention and Visitors Bureau contracts come up for renewal, so that they would all come up at the same time. Am I sensing that that might be
I would concur with
agreeable,
that.
and that we
Yeah.
don't set it into stone?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, then we'll proceed. Any other miscellaneous items?
The Athens Police Department's request for vehicles. The last time we met, we kind of a mini green fleet, finance, personnel, transportation mix going on there. The chief has provided information. I haven't received a feedback, and we're up against it in order to get anything on the state bid. Essentially, I would have an ordinance up Monday, and I would need it passed in order to meet the Thursday, April 19th.
Fleet, or there was discussion, to recap, with the police chief, the service safety director, and several members of council to look at the quotes for the autos that had been brought in. And then Councilmember Gosney, and rightfully so, reminded us of the Green Fleet policy and the recommendation that when we can, and when the costs show that we could keep the cost of the purchase of the auto within 115%, that we should try and consider vehicles that were more fuel efficient, or, so we were looking at, I believe, an electric car, and but the recommendations for the expenses on that overall for the 10-year operating costs were substantially more than 115%. But I think that was a good suggestion to look at it. We should always be looking at the ways we can do that.
It may have been you, someone at the Finance and Personnel Auditor meeting inquired about the underutilization of our hybrid at code. It's a Prius. The chief is willing to take that car, but it does leave me a void in code. I will have to replace a vehicle there, meaning he would take it for the DARE vehicle and have that. It would not serve the multi-purpose facet that we talked about. It certainly wouldn't be a police cruiser chasing. The Prius isn't going to be out there chasing someone down necessarily, but it could be completely outfitted educationally and with a DARE.
Right. And that was an idea of Councilmember Falls,
Was
that
it? I'm
maybe
sorry, I
that could
couldn't
be an
remember.
example, to have the DARE, have a fuel-efficient DARE vehicle to send another kind of message to the community too, and to children.
So if that is the council's wish and or desire, I then have to get back with the auditor to find I was trying to find the state bid pricing on like a Ford Focus to replace for the code enforcement office. But that would again come out of cap, and we know that's tight in the general fund. And the additional monies for the other vehicle for use by the police department, the request is he probably needs just a little over $6,000 split between the drug fund money and law enforcement trust funds for appropriation for the Monday meeting in order to meet that state bid pricing.
So
There were two vehicles we discussed. if you recall.
correct. So we're talking about purchase of two vehicles,
Well, this would be just for the singular one. If we're going to repurpose the Prius to become the DARE vehicle, then I'm going to be asking on Monday for money for something
For
like
code
that.
office
For
vehicle.
the code office, that would be a good energy saver, good gas mileage. And this is probably the first time the auditors heard this, so we don't know what the coffers look like.
well, and that's the other thing, it's the question what the bottom line on that is, and to get other council members' input. Yes, Councilmember Patterson.
I'm just curious, because, the Prius would not serve the purpose of the multi-purpose vehicle. In my conversations with the chief, he was looking for something that could carry heavy objects.
Well, that would be possibly via the other vehicle, but it would not serve a dual purpose as a patrol vehicle, meaning when it was not in use as DARE, it would not be able to be utilized as a patrol cruiser.
Which hasn't been the case for the DARE vehicle for many years,
True? True that.
more than a decade.
True that.
Well, let me ask this. I realize we're in number one, we're in a time crunch. Number two, we need some information from the auditors. Number three, it's our job to appropriate or approve appropriations of money, but it's not our job to micromanage what's going to work best in the departments. So we can have suggestions, and I very much value those and respect the suggestions we've all made, but I think I need to ask you all for recommendation on what you think's the best approach on solving the vehicle dilemma.
The upside to only purchasing one of the vehicles from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund, Drug Fund, allows them to retain some money for other uses. As you recall, some of you were very concerned about emptying out those funds, even though they seem to be replenished. So that's an upside. Absolutely on board with adding an educational, Ron Lucas suggested a cool city's emblem on the Dare Prius, if we get to that. But again, it will come down to dollars and cents when we meet with the auditor to review what is available
And those
to purchase another vehicle.
And those restricted funds and the drug enforcement funds are absolutely for them to use on this kind of purposes. So we're not meaning to question that in any way. And then the other downside of it too is if you need to ask for another vehicle and take it out of cap, we have about $34,000 in the cap fund right now to last us capital improvements for the entire city from now until the end of the year. And that's tight.
So I'll have some form of ordinances before you come Monday, based on the information that we receive back and from the auditor's office.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bicycle.
Are we
And I think we are finished with all of our
think we're
items.
and ready to move into Planning and Development Committee? With Chris Paul, who is the chair.
Thank you. This is a continuation of our discussion about the AEP contract, and I turn it over to Wahoo, who knows more about this than anybody.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we discussed a couple weeks ago, we're working with AEP to draft a renewal franchise agreement that gives them the privilege to use city property, public right-of-way, in order to install and maintain their equipment, lines, poles, everything necessary to provide the power that we all use here in the city. We've heard back from them after we had a meeting with the mayor's office and AEP, and we do have some feedback. There are a couple things that have been, a couple words to the original wording. If you'll recall, we had a section on tree trimming practices that the city wished to include as part of the new contract due to some concerns that we've had over the years. There were a few items that I wished to include regarding renewable energy, as well as establishing an energy efficiency and renewable energy program in the city through a franchise fee. Those two items considered best practices by our regional EPA for these types of agreements when it comes time to renegotiate this type of a franchise agreement. And some of the items AEP has, I would kind of wish they were here tonight, but perhaps we'll hear from them later on as this continues. So I don't want to speak for them. I'm not going to read their responses to it, except to say that we have what I think everyone agrees could be a temporary agreement again, hopefully the last time, in which we would insert some language about the tree trimming practices and put that agreement in place now and then give, I think they mentioned 1 year. I would prefer the end of 2012 just to push this along quicker so that it would be less than a year of an extension if AEP is amenable to that. So we can ask them if that would work.
So you would say through December 31st, 2012,
Yeah.
and then have successive one-year term renewals?
And then after that to have, not permanent, but a long-term agreement in place, I would hope. We can't keep continuing this the way we are, but if we can at least address the tree trimming practices now, and then give the end of this year to possibly work on a couple of the other items, if that's possible. One other thing that was in discussion was shared use. Is it joint use, I guess, they refer to it as? And so that's when AEP contracts with other companies for the use of their poles and the use of city right-of-way. And that, it doesn't look like they're willing to put it in the contract, which kind of surprises me because it seems like it would make sense for the city to be aware of exactly what infrastructure or public utility work is being done in the city. And so I'm not sure what goes on internally in which they're not interested in having that as inserted as part of this agreement, but maybe we'll hear a little more about it. But it doesn't look like they're willing to include it at this point. So I would remind council that I believe it was April 30th, we had the expiration of our previous contract. So probably we'll have, I'll ask for suspension on this agreement through the end of 2012 to serve as a placeholder. And if there's anything you'd like to add, the mayor's office.
I got the shall in there for the tree standards, so that's a,
Did they respond?
they said yes to that, and yes to shall under general time and date of the required work shall also be communicated. So
They did, yeah.
that was
So-
like leaps and bounds. in some
So we
ways.
strengthened the wording in which the contract would say that they shall follow industry standards, so it would be a requirement. They say they do currently, so I'm not sure it would be much of a change in practice, but it would be a change in the way our ordinance is, or our agreement is. So
I just
hopefully
couldn't
we
get the
would see some
shoes in
improvements.
there. We're going to talk about shoes.
You couldn't get the
but-
shoe removal? Part of it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Thank you. The other, I have one miscellaneous, actually, you have the miscellaneous, about the piece of property that we saw on
Columbus
our
Road?
exciting street tour on Saturday. This just came into, kind of fell upon the city's lap last week.
I believe you have a copy of the,
Yes.
that I received April 4th concerning, it was actually put out for sheriff's sale twice, I believe. Nobody's picked it up. If you look on the, let's see, third page, basically, Court of Common Pleas says, let's see, court hereby gives notice of City of Athens political subdivision which the property is located and offers to forfeit said property to the City of Athens upon petition of the court, to the court by the City of Athens. We have court further hereby notifies the City of Athens said petition is not filed within 10 days of date of filing of this notice. The court shall forfeit the property to the State of Ohio. This is the gas station on Columbus Road. I think it's 83 Columbus Road. I think you saw it at your tour. Normally, I wouldn't even think about it, except this happens to be in a wellhead protection area. It is we're right now working with trying to find out what it would cost. It has underground gas tanks that should be removed, if we can do that. We don't have a price for that right now at this time.
We should by hopefully close of business Wednesday. So we have Cameron Environmental who is going to look at that. They're actually doing the speedway excavation.
On East
Andy
State.
is totally impressed in terms of they're professionals. They know they're going to give a price not only on tank removal, but an initial environmental assessment. Again, that does not mean if there were to be found that something had leaked and it had to be remedied and mitigated, that would be an additional cost. So I guess the request we were going to ask for today, council, is possibly to consider a special session this week, and wait till after Wednesday we have that information, or authorizing the mayor to go ahead and petition the court with whatever caveats based on whether it be dollar amounts or findings.
And again, it's a black box at this point. I mean, my biggest worry is that we find massive contamination. On the other hand, if there is contamination, we want to know about it, we want to fix it. And nobody else has stepped forward to pick up this. And I don't know if it was forfeited to the state, whether they want to do it in a timely manner or not either. So this is my concern, and I know we may be taking on a cost that we don't like to do, but the fact is, this is wellhead protection area. I assure you stopped at the place and saw what it looks like. I'm told the tanks aren't that old, so there's a good possibility there's no contamination issues, but I don't know much about it. It's as I say, an unknown.
So basically, why you're bringing this up right now is that when this petition came before the court, the city had 10 days.
Yes.
Has 10 days on which to act on it. And so that's why we need either to cringe and shake our heads no right now, or have a special session and consider this under suspension, whatever ordinance would come forward, either giving you okay to negotiate or I think that the situation with the state is if it the city does not take it, the state will take it. It's always a question of what the state will do with it.
And how timely if they do it.
Right. So, once we have the property, we can also, and get it cleaned up or whatever we decide to do with it, we would also be able to dispose of it as we see fit, so.
Do we have any experience with this kind of property transfer and whether or not, or in the past with the state, whether they've cleaned it up or not? Or
We were told they charge us $25. There's no dollar amount in here that,
Probably paperwork.
it doesn't say that there's any associated cost.
So we
But
just-
I'm sure, as we all know, there's associated costs.
Kathy, I don't
with
know,
real
is
estate
there any experience,
transactions.
I mean, do we have any experience with this kind of thing?
I don't remember any forfeitures. I'm sure the law director's office could say better. I mean, we get donations. It's
I
not
don't
like
think I've
we
ever
haven't
seen
handled
one
that yet.
watching council since 1992.
But if the state took it, wouldn't they be under the same wellhead protection rules and
Yeah,
regulations?
but they may attempt my understanding of the process, and so far it's played out as John Paskey has stated, is they will attempt to sell from there. From the wellhead protection, at least two members of the team, we're leaning towards, let's take this property, let's we'll find out what it will cost, what it's creating and what have you. Something's existing now, it's been existing for a period of years. What do you say? They say
Chief-
20 years, or
Chief Chalk says 1990, he said the tanks went in,
so?
replaced.
So they're not ancient tanks?
They're not.
So-
And when we did the wellhead protection plan, there was an inventory taken of every business, every school, every, thing in the wellhead protection area. And they were one of them. And, of course, as the mayor said, that was, my first year on council was 2002. Anything could have happened. However, as I recall, they were required to put in secondary containment, which is in our wellhead protection plan for their tanks then. So hopefully that has it helped.
And
But,
theoretically.
there was an inventory taken and investigated, then.
And the tanks have been empty for however long, or
We can't say for
don't
sure.
know.
We may have a better idea after Kemron looks at this and then assesses it on Wednesday.
Okay.
Comes back to us.
So what you want is a special session on Thursday.
That would
Should we all have
good.
lunch, boys and girls?
Before the town hall meeting?
Well, that would be,
Except Thursday?
Oh,
that would be an option to have
Yeah, we could do that.
A special
Is everybody gonna
session
go to the town hall meeting? or we're
at
gonna
6
have
o'clock before before
quorum? No.
Thursday? Is that-
Thursday. I mean, what's the last day that we can have
well, I will
special?
call tomorrow to confirm that we have until close of business on Friday.
Okay,
Wednesday.
so it's either Thursday or
Wednesday.
Friday?
Yeah, Friday.
Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday?
Thursday or...
How much
And
notice
Debbie,
do you
our-
have to give about meetings? 24 hours?
Our brain is not here, so the master emailer person, coordinator, won't be here till Thursday, so we have to,
We can get out to the media if need be.
Right.
We'll task that.
Friday
So-
would be better.
would Friday,
What time?
Yeah, what time on Friday?
What do we
we'd have to do it before 5,
What's a quorum again? We need
5 out of
a
7.
minimum of 5 people present.
Let's ask Debbie if she can work with Paula to
Debbie won't
schedule-
be here till
Oh,
Thursday.
she won't be back.
So, that's what I meant.
You
by
didn't
our
like the
brain.
idea of doing it before the town hall meeting?
What,
I guess we
The
would
earliest
be
I could do
here.
on a Friday, just FYI, is
I couldn't be,
4.
but,
No earlier.
you know.
well, how about after the town hall meeting? Well, except for, I mean, we can go off, I mean, this theoretically shouldn't take a couple hours. I mean, it should take relatively small amount of time.
5 minutes,
I'd give it a 15.
15 minutes, okay.
It would make the most sense, since most of us will be at the town hall meeting. We could do it after, before, in the middle. I don't know.
After, do you think it'll take the full time again? Because the building closes, right? They
At
close
9.
the rec center. Can we stay there as city
Yeah, I think we
council?
can. They trust us, I hope.
I mean, I would say after.
So at
town hall meeting.
8:45, well, and we can also, exit the town hall meeting. It's supposed to be over at 8:30.
8:30.
We could say that our council meeting starts at 8:30 on Thursday.
Okay.
He'll just, he'll just cut it down. And then
Okay.
take whatever time we need.
As soon as I receive information from that, I'll
Okay.
get that out to everyone in my phone.
So
We'll get a notice out, we'll get Charlene to do that. If
Okay,
not, our
thank you.
Public information officer.
right, how many people are planning on being at the town hall meeting? So, at least 5?
Good. Possibly.
And Chris, did you want to discuss this tonight, or is this for a future meeting?
Which thing? No. No.
Okay.
No.
That's all we have on planning development.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Transportation Committee, chaired by Eli Ruth Osney.
Thank you. Tonight, we have a couple items. We'll be talking about street paving, some sidewalk assessment work that the city is undertaking, and possibly there will be some miscellaneous. Just to start off before we get to the work, we had our annual street tour this past weekend, Saturday, for a few hours, and a lot of fun. We got to see all corners of the city, a lot of different infrastructure projects that the city's been working on over the past few years, and are finally some long-term projects like the Grosvenor Slip that are finally being addressed. And so it was good to see that. We had press, and we had the police captain and the streets supervisor.
Well, he's our water supervisor.
I'm sorry, water supervisor. Water supervisor as well, and so we got to see different types of city infrastructure. One of the things we discussed was annual paving, which is sort of general maintenance the city does every year to improve and repair our streets. And this year, we're looking to increase funding somewhat for that from what was a little over, it looks like about $320,000 last year, increasing to $400,000 this year for street paving and rehab. And part of this is possible due to the levy that was passed with the one-year overlap last year that the residents passed. So we have a little bit more funding available, and so we're able to do a little bit more work. We have a tentative list of streets that will be worked on as part of this annual paving project. It's still subject to change. It's available in the City Council's office or through City Council or through the Mayor's office, I'm sure, if anyone is interested in the specifics. We also have several streets that will be resurfaced as part of other projects this year. And those include a part of West Union from Schaefer to High, Joneswood, Terrace, and Riverview will be resurfaced in conjunction with some water work that's being done. Harris, Ransom, McGuffey, as well as part of Columbus Circle Drive that we've discussed, and the very north end of Court Street will be re-bricked, I believe, just the very last end of it there. And so a lot of work that's going to happen this summer. Pretty big list. Do we have any questions in particular? We will be spending $200,000 out of, do you know what these two funds are? 572?
Street rehab.
Street rehab.
And then
220 and streets
220.
and street rehab.
Streets and street rehab, okay. So it'll be split
572.
between two different funds that the city has. The second item is sidewalk assessments. And this is something, the city has passed a bicycle and pedestrian master plan to try to improve access for pedestrians and cyclists. We've also done, I think it was completed last year, the city did a comprehensive survey of sidewalks throughout the entire city, and they were graded based on their quality, based on what in some places there weren't sidewalks, and so those were marked as high priority. And so we have a comprehensive map of the city that shows areas that need the most improvement in their sidewalks, as well as areas that don't, but we can prioritize it that way. And so one thing the city engineer's office is doing is looking at different projects the city's doing, like our North Court Street repair project through the sewer infrastructure there, and the Grosvenor Slip, for example. And so the city engineering office is looking at where we can get the most sidewalk work done that would have the most impact. And so we're looking at several areas for work this year. I mentioned the Grosvenor Slip. This is an area that we're looking to improve. And these are all through an assessment process. Individual property owners are responsible for maintaining the sidewalk on their property. And so one thing that the city has been doing for several years is putting large projects together that will make the cost cheaper for individual property owners if they choose to participate, as opposed to doing it themselves, and assessing them for the cost of that. So they pay the city either through a payment or through an assessment that will appear on their property tax bill if they wish to pay it over several years. So all of these are under an assessment process. The Grosvenor area would be Grosvenor almost all the way to Madison. The city takes on responsibility for curbs and crosswalks, and then property owners are responsible for the remainder of the sidewalk. This is, for the Grosvenor project, this is $80,000 worth of work. About half of it will be the city's cost, half will be assessed to the property owners on the street. And in order to do this, in conjunction with the repair of the slip, we need to move two different pieces of legislation forward. One is a resolution of necessity, which says we've identified this area in need of repair. For the public good, we need to do work here to improve the sidewalks. And then that will cost the city to notify property owners. And then we also need to appropriate some money in order to pay for some of those projects. And we saved some money with the slip repair. We got a bid that was a really good bid and lower than anticipated, so we're able to fund additional sidewalk work in this part of town. We also have the North Court Street area, and this is not just North Court Street, but some other parts of the east side, or some parts of the east side that we can include in this project. And this is East State Street from Carpenter to Morris, an estimated $11,000 total for that work. Morris Avenue, the entirety of it, I believe, all the problem areas on Morris Avenue, and the improvements to Morris Avenue are roughly $44,000. That's the estimate right now. I mentioned Grosvenor Street already, but Grosvenor Street might come under two different assessments, one for the Carpenter to Fort section, and then when we do the slip, that will be the remainder of Grosvenor Street. And then also Franklin, which would be roughly $12,000 of sidewalk work on Franklin. The majority of this would be under assessment, so property owners would be responsible for most of that cost. Do we have anything that's needed in addition, or anything to add to the sidewalk assessment discussion?
No, I believe you're covering it.
No, I believe Andy did give you a timeline, typical year schematic for that.
He did.
So you know that what has to be put out there.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to thank the people who did the sidewalk survey. I think Chris was involved in it, Paul Rogue, Andy. I'm trying to remember all the participants.
Tom Wolf,
Tom Wolf, okay.
Ron Lucas.
Ron Lucas.
Okay.
It was like, they always pick like 90-degree days.
Yeah. Go out there and sweat it out with
They burn a lot of calories.
Followed, part of that
Yep,
followed.
followed.
Yeah. And so that was a lot of work, and this is having that identifies all the problem areas is very helpful when it comes to planning and grouping these projects so that we can do it as efficiently as possible. We will need resolutions Monday for these assessments in order to meet the timeline that we learned about on the street tour for assessments. It's a lengthy process, and we have to follow the to the T state code that outlines exactly what has to be in place when in order to get this done. One last item is the Safe Routes to Schools. This is last year's project, which we're doing the construction of now, or preparing for it. And this is a bike path spur that connects Morris Avenue to the bicycle path. We also saw this on the street tour. Sorry?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. As the service safety director is pointing out, some issues have come up with property boundaries and I guess who owns exactly what piece of property. Or were there also some alignment issues in terms of getting it connected the best way to the bike path? So that's a long way to say that we need a little bit of additional money in order to hopefully make this project work, in order to do some of the survey work and really define exactly where the right-of-way is through there so that we know where we can put this shared use path. And so there would be an additional appropriation necessary for this that would be reimbursed through the grant that we received. It's not additional cost to the city, at least not much. But we don't have an estimate right now. I can't imagine it's a huge amount, but the quotes are coming in very soon, so we'll know before this would be proposed how much that additional cost will be. Any questions?
I had two
Yeah.
comments or questions. So this is over OU land?
We're working closely with the Ohio University, not only Harry Wyatt, but also Donna Goss, and a real estate community engagement individual, in terms of what we can put together for that. And it also crosses Hawking Conservancy District land.
And then one other comment on the street tour.
Yeah.
Was there any comments made about the hill on 4th Street, or was there any discussion about?
We went and saw it.
We stopped.
Seen it too, so I just wondered if, was there any discussion about safety or improvements? Or
We talked with the property owners there as well as amongst the attendees of the street tour. There is, I believe there's a private property versus public property issue in terms of where the rocks are that are on the hillside there. And so I know that that's being looked at and discussed both within the community and within the city in terms of what the best way is to ensure the safety of everybody that could potentially be on 4th Street.
And I did share with council at the street tour that Mr. Weiser has contacted me regarding the possible donation of a portion of the property that, of course, contains the rockfall area. And he has called again today asking about that. And we just haven't had our conversations yet internally or with the law director's office regarding that. So.
clarifying that he would like to donate that property to the city?
Yes.
That's right. We could take the rocks and put them in the gas tanks.
All right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Just one comment about the street tour, to thank the staff that did that. And I think what was in evidence, what was really helpful this year was having the water department person there, as well as street, and it kind of points to, I mean, just their conversation when they were taking us on the tour points to how much they coordinate their projects. And we're very fortunate to have the staff that we have, including the water department, that when that rock fell, as I understand it, they were working underneath the rock, fixing the water line.
Water,
And
sewer, streets, they all
they
came
were
out
all
and
there.
were
So
charged.
many thanks from, on behalf of all of us for what they've done, especially these
Absolutely.
past few months.
I think the one group that was missing was the code. It would be nice to have code.
It'd be very nice.
Right, but I had attempted, but it just did not coordinate in terms of
Right.
scheduling for the day.
Maybe we
So
need
I
to-
agree that we would attempt to keep that going and have code enforcement.
And I would just request next year, not on a holiday weekend.
Kurt, Ken, go ahead.
Thank you. If I could echo again what Member Nisley said and acknowledge that something else that I think we confirmed during the street tour is that we're going to be busy this summer. The Public Works Director getting a lot of asphalt and pavement down. And these are complaints that we've heard as elected officials. The Mayor's office as well has fielded a number of concerns about the disrepair of our streets. And we're going to be tackling a lot of this year, which I think is, again, pleasing and moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Quick, 4th Street area, we, city through Safe Routes to School just completed a stairway behind, and I've had more than one inquiry about railings on that. Railings are ordered and will be installed.
They're on now.
They're on now.
We walked it.
Were they on there?
It was a nice stair.
I walked it the other day. They were there.
So they're, okay, even better.
Yeah, please.
If I may, I mean, again, speaking speaking to the safe routes, one of the things that I have heard on several occasions from constituents is safety, possibly in the future working into any future grants, planning for some security lighting to go along through a lot of these new pathways, and in particular, possibly this connector from Morris to the bike path. But any of them would, I think, would be prudent, start looking into security lighting.
Great. Any other transportation items that we need to address? Great. Well, that's it for the Transportation Committee. And that's the last committee on the agenda. Okay.